Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. So today we have a current state of VR video. We're going to be talking about why and how VR is just getting so much better, especially for gamers. But I do want to address some other factors, like how I still constantly see comments of VR is dead, VR is just a gimmick, every game's a tech demo, the notion that PCVR is just way better, another topic that we'll have to spend a minute on, how yes, PCVR games from 8+ years ago are sometimes still a lot better than the games we get now. But I don't think that's going to be the case for much longer. So I'm going to break down all of that for you guys today. There's a lot to discuss. It's half hype, half history, and half totally other stuff. Okay, scratch the halves. Part entertainment, part history, part my predictions for the future, and part hype. Okay, that's what you guys are going to get here. I hope you enjoy this video. It should be a very fun discussion. Now, there are, of course, the links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead to specifically with topics like what's coming down the pipeline that has me so excited for the future of VR, or the controversial discussion of PCVR is better. Now, let's not waste any time and just jump into a very quick history lesson with how consumer VR got started. Initially, you had two major players in the VR industry. You had Valve working in conjunction with HTC, and it was then Facebook who bought their way into the VR scene by purchasing Oculus for $4 billion. That was the beginning there, guys. And honestly, it's at this point, after 8 years, there's really only one player and it's only Meta, which is really bad, but we'll get to that later. Now, staying on the history, they both came out, PCVR headsets, and it was very exciting technology. People were really intrigued. They were taking slightly different routes, but the experience was very similar, and the only problem was there was just no software. Now, luckily, both Valve and Meta did invest. Valve historically gave us Half-Life Alyx, and Meta helped fund a bunch of high production value games. This included titles like Medal of Honor Above and Beyond from Respawn, and Stormland from Insomniac Games. And VR was in a much different state back then. There was a ton of hype, and the sentiment was, hey, listen, all we need to do is make better games, and the players will come. But unfortunately, getting into VR is just still too much of a financial hurdle for most people. So that moved Meta into the Oculus Quest era. And this was a big reboot for the industry. Honestly, they came in and just pressed that reset button hard and things changed. The OG PCVR players like myself were definitely upset. Titles that were already successful on PCVR like Onward saw the wrath of mobile VR. Games like that were downgraded to help support Quest players to play with PCVR players. It was almost like an insult to how good PCVR was. And original mobile VR was just okay. Just okay. There's no way around it. And still today, it's still proving itself. We'll get there. We're slowly inching our way towards the now. So the industry gets this big reset, and with it came VR graphics being knocked into the Stone Age. Now, at this point, the original PCVR hype had also died out, and those who were working as developers in the industry had a much better understanding of VR's profitability. So yeah, VR gaming went back to low quality graphics, lots of casual games, cash grab titles. Honestly, that's how the community thought of it, but it's not really true. In the beginning, we got those bigger titles because we didn't understand the industry. There was a lot of hype. People were excited. They threw some money in. But that's also why early titles like Batman VR or the Wolfenstein Cyberpilot and even Doom VFR, they were very small, shallow games. Batman and Wolfenstein were like 45 minutes each, or maybe Wolfenstein was like 90 minutes total. And that's because somewhere during development, someone ran the numbers and said, listen, there's this many VR players. We're not going to make any money. Finish it up. That's also why Doom released as a buggy mess. And if you don't remember that, on Bethesda's actual page, they had 2 pages of known bugs that they were working through after release. So it was pretty rough. In the very beginning, when they started those projects, they didn't know they weren't going to make money on them. They didn't know that they thought VR was going to explode. That's what the industry was thinking. So a lot of people went in harder than they should have financially, and they learned their lesson and then said, I'm not doing VR again. So VR was the wild, wild west. And while Quest reset things and it felt like the game quality just, got shot down so hard, it brought stability and financial profitability to a lot of these developers who wanted to stay in VR. That was a major factor. So as much as I was absolutely disgusted and really made video after video discussing how the Quest has downgraded VR gaming, in retrospect though, this was a necessary doubling back for the industry. Now there is this naive notion out there that if Meta wasn't trying to take over VR and PCVR would have been allowed to continue, then the whole industry would be in a better state right now and we'd have much higher quality games. Now by every metric I have seen, I cannot imagine that to be the case at all. Even Valve went out on a limb, spent probably $100 million, developed, after multiple years, Half-Life Alyx, a known and beloved IP, probably gave us the best of VR, and it didn't move the needle enough to really grow the industry. So PCVR, no matter how much I or you love it, just wasn't growing at the rate it needed to. And I know people are like, well, but it was growing. You have to understand industry and just how this stuff works. You need a certain growth rate for things to be viable. You also need to put your effort into the place where it benefits you the most. You can say, oh, sure, I love VR. We could put all our effort into that and grow it a little bit and make a little bit of money. Or, you know, we could put a little bit of effort here, DLC for our Flats game, and make 10,000 times the profit. And in industry, I'm sorry, but you have to follow that route. There's a reason why we have things like the starving artists, the people who pursue nothing but their passion and want to get that out there, and we always portray them as being poor and broke. Yeah, that's what happens. Now, as much as I hate that VR is pretty much controlled by just one company now, namely Meta, I also have to acknowledge the fact that they are basically the industry's savior. Now, again, I completely understand they're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. This is strictly a financial move for them. They've hit maximum growth potential on their social media platforms, and they need to move into a new sector. Zuckerberg has decided that sector will be XR, and I don't doubt they'll use this like they have their other products in the past, collecting plenty of user information, and finding ways to squeeze the most profit out of it. Now, I don't think for a second that this is right, and I don't want to go down the whole conversation of, well, everybody does it, so let's just let it go. Obviously, I think you guys should vote with your wallet. So if you're against the company, I'm 100% with you saying I will never buy into Meta. And luckily there are a few other good options out there, like you could check out Pico, but Pico's owned by ByteDance and you kind of go down that same rabbit hole as Meta. There are PCVR options, like big screen's a good one to check out. There's even, PlayStation VR 2. As much as I've had my issues with that headset, you could use it for PCVR now. It's still pretty good if you have a PlayStation 5. There's titles you can't get anywhere else. So there are other options out there. But at the end of the day, Meta is the only one really pushing a lot of money into VR, and they basically have been its life support. But this brings us into another topic I constantly see, and that's people saying that VR is dead, and Meta is just keeping it on life support by burning billions every year. Now, under normal circumstances, I would agree with this. However, we've seen Meta's game plan. They told it to us years ago, and they said for the next 10 plus years, we're going to be dumping this much money in. And they said, what we expect to see is the profit in return gets higher and higher each year, and eventually we start to lower how much money we're putting in. And we are starting to see those graphs cross. So it looks like they're holding the course and it's going well. Now they did have to course correct here and there, do some, budgetary adjustments, scale back some spending, but it looks like their 10-year plan is paying off. And that brings us to the future. Why I'm so excited and where I think VR is going in the next 2+ years. So after nearly a decade and hundreds of billions of dollars in investments, VR has become a stable and profitable platform for many developers. Meta has been able to overcome the vast majority of issues with this technology and at the same time lower the price tag to a point that the average consumer can afford. Now, the Meta Quest 3 did sell quite well during the last holiday season, but after that, sales dropped off, which is most likely due to the current economical state and the fact that this is a more expensive headset than the previous one. Now, I'm expecting things will change in the near future when the Meta Quest 3 S gets announced. I have no inside information regarding this one, but at this point, it feels like an open secret. And if we're able to get into the Quest 3 ecosystem for $300, plus we have a slew of big name titles right around the corner, it's an amazing recipe for an absolutely fantastic holiday season, and we could soon see millions of new VR gamers. So great games, reinforce the gamers, they like the hardware's cheap enough, people get into it. It's just, the opposite of a downward spiral. We just grow and grow and grow. We reinforce each other. And that's like the type of community I witnessed at Gamescom. Now, Gamescom is the world's biggest gaming event in Germany that I recently went to and I discussed. But the fact that there were just so many VR developers, all passionate, all showing off high quality stuff, and everyone in there, like, people weren't just positive because they like VR. You know, if there was anything wrong there, we called it out. We were very positive. We were very helpful to one another, watching the industry grow. And I feel like it's got this type of like grassroots love out there right now that's gonna eventually spiral into the mainstream. Now, VR becoming mainstream is a whole nother aspect, but also once again, Meta and a few other companies out there are getting deeply invested into XR wearables. We know the primary function of the Quest is gaming. However, Meta keeps giving us more and more non-gaming features. You could also see other companies like Pico pursuing this with the Pico 4 Ultra, as a lot of their marketing shows their headset being used in non-gaming circumstances. And we also know that maybe it wasn't the most successful, but Apple recently entered the industry with their Apple Vision Pro, and there are people out there who love it, but they also showed us one other aspect of this technology. When you push it all the way to the extreme, it is insanely incredible. Now, I got my first Apple Vision Pro demo recently from, sadly, it's Bradley. He was my roommate at Gamescom, and he basically lives with that headset on. Like, he walked around the entire time in the Airbnb wearing that headset. I kid you not, he went to sleep with it on multiple nights and woke up wearing it and just went right back in. And that's kind of the future that Meta wants to see, even Apple wants to see. They want these to be the new computing devices, supplemental with our phone, or, you know, actually take over some of the functionality of our phone, wear them as much as possible. And we are getting there. Now, I don't want to see everybody out on the road wearing these things, or, you know, you have to be worried about you're being recorded 24/7, or someone's not looking you in the eye and they're actually playing games midair while they're talking to you. That's not the future I really want to see, but I do love using this technology in other aspects. I've used my Quest 3 on a plane on multiple occasions, and it was pretty good. You know, to sit there and watch a movie, but the product's gonna get slimmer and slimmer, more functionality, more comfort, hopefully eventually better battery life. Like, I personally on an airplane use something like the X-Real glasses and plug them into my phone, so I have all the functionality of my phone, but just so much more comfortable. It actually increases the battery life of the phone when you're not using your main screen and using the XR glasses. Little increase there, but it's just like a great experience. And when we get a lot of that technology into a form factor close to a phone, which is slowly getting there, that's on Meta's roadmap 10 years, 15 years from now, that's, you know, when I think VR or XR technologies will actually be mainstream, when they bring functionality to the table that everyone can benefit from, like immediate translation. So you're in another country and you look at signs and it's translated actively on your screen, or you could actually see navigation. A lot of things you use your cell phone for, just in a new device that's a little bit more comfortable. You might say, well, I have my phone, that's good enough. To give you a prime example, I use my Ray-Ban Metas every time I go out now to record. And it's so much more natural to not have a phone in your hand and be able to record. You don't have to have a phone and sit there and lose a hand and are you stable? Just put them on your head and just go and just do things. And it makes for the best videos when I'm playing with my kids or my dog or something like that, when you're doing natural activities. And I feel like, you know, the wearable headset could become part of our daily life down the road. That's what's going to make it mainstream, not gaming, guys. And that was today's video. I'm sure you'll have plenty of comments. Let me hear them down put them down here. And if you enjoyed this video, thumbs up, and I will see you guys on next time.